What is going on, lads? Jack here, and welcome to episode 55 of the Pentagon Challenge, here with Vitoria in the Brazilian First Division. Hopefully you guys are good. Since the last episode, there's been a few games to tell you guys about. We're now midway through July, so we are 2 months into the season. Not been the easiest start by any means, but we're doing okay, you know. We're out the relegation zone. Obviously, our aim this year is to avoid relegation. That is what I'm aiming for, and that is what we are currently going with. So looking at confidence, you can see here, board are happy that I'm playing youth players, which is one of their kind of big philosophies here. Pretty happy with our kind of performances in competitions, which is good. In terms of matches, as you'll see when we come on to the results, it's been a little bit of a rocky start to my time here in Brazil. However, I'm hoping that we can really crack on now and do a good job. So, I mean, looking at these transfers, the players who I've brought in have had a really good impact, and as you can see, the board and the fans are very happy with them, which is great to see. A few other players who perhaps haven't shone as well, but overall, we're doing okay. As you can see, we've got a few players here who are almost going to get a suspension for a yellow card, so I've got to keep an eye on that. But I thought today, just to crack things off, before we get into even any of the results, I do kind of a squad rundown, because I realised, like, upon watching back at the previous episode, that I never really reviewed the squad, never really got you guys seeing exactly kind of who's here and I guess what our team is made up of. So we'll do this now, and then I'll crack on into the results. No transfers to tell you guys about since the last episode. Okay, so anyway, in goal we have Vicente, Brazilian goalkeeper. He's not the best goalkeeper in the world, but he has been a very good player for us. I mean, he's averaged a rating of 6.9, which isn't too bad for a goalkeeper. As you can see, 16 clean sheets in 27 appearances this year. He's been a very good player for us. He came in this year. He came into kind of the first team this year from the reserves after I sold our first choice goalkeeper Douglas for a bit of money. I'm bored of thinking I sold Douglas a little bit cheap. I was quite happy to get £1 million for the old goalkeeper. But no, he's not the strongest player in the squad, and if I was to say we have a weak link, it might be him. But he has done okay in his appearances, and that's kind of, I guess, the main thing. At right centre-back we have Alex. A lot of interest shown in this guy. I don't intend to sell him. He's a very, very good centre-back. 24, so still a little bit of kind of time to develop as a player, you'd think. Very good defensive and aerial player. Perhaps his pace lets him down a little, but he's been a very solid player for us. As you can see, 7.1 average rating across the last 5 games in the league. He's a good player. And then partnering him at centre-back is Alan Wellington. This guy, absolutely amazing centre-back. He's 22. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up selling him in the near future. He's actually got 4 years left on his deal, so obviously with his contract lasting for 4 more years, my kind of plan is to try and keep hold of him for at least the next 2 or 3 years, and then potentially sell him on to a team in Europe when he's at his peak for a decent amount of money. So I'm holding on for this guy for as long as I can. In Brazil, players all have like release clauses which are relative to their amount they get paid a week. So Alan Wellington has a release clause of £93 million. So, I mean, if a team wants to come into him and I need to sell him against my will, it's going to have to be an absolutely crazy offer for him to be going out. So, I mean, he's one of these players where he's a core of the club at the moment and he's happy playing here, but I've got to keep an eye on that money and make sure that I do cash in on him, because he's going to be there and he's going to be a kind of vital player that we do sell on when we need to in the future. Our third centre-back in our back three is Junior. This guy, another really good, strong centre-back, good in the air again. It's kind of a recurring theme here. Perhaps lacks the pace that I like to have in my centre-backs, and a lot of interest shown in this guy during the summer transfer window, but I have managed to keep hold of him at the moment. He's a really solid player for us. What can I say? He very much fits the mould of this team with our back three, who are 3 very solid players in my eyes. At right wing back we have Gabriel, 24 years old. This guy, he's not the craziest player, but what he is he's a good physical wing back who offers something going forward. He has decent crossing. His stamina is good, which means he gets up and down the field a lot. Pretty solid defensive stats as well for a wing back. That's always a concern of mine. Sometimes it can be the case of you have a wing back who just can't defend. This guy can very much defend when he needs to. His good pace allows him to get up and down the field. And overall, just another very strong player in this squad. I mean, I kind of feel like with this team, the foundations are there, and although we've not been performing in the league, it's just going to take one or two more additions and players to really up their game and play to what they can, and we should be a solid mid-table team easily. At left wing back, we have Gabriel Aranju, or Arojo, I don't know, it's a Portuguese name, but this guy, old left back, he's an experienced head, you know, he has very good stats, as you can see. He's got those mental stats that perhaps our other wing back lacks. This guy, he's experienced. He's one of these players who I am going to have to look to replace in the future, but he's been a very solid player for us so far this year. Averaged a 7.53 rating in 33 games. Good little player for us going forward as well, and he's recently signed a new contract, which is another added bonus. At centre mid, we have Aziz Zamba. This guy is a superb little player for us. I signed him at the start of this year. He qualified for Brazilian citizenship as well at the start of this season, which meant that he doesn't count as one of the foreign players in the squad, as in Brazil you're only allowed 3 foreign players in your starting 11. So he's a very good player. He's originally from Gambia. He's one of their strongest players, but he's a very, very strong centre mid. Still 24, so still some time to develop. The only thing that really lets him down is his lack of pace. I am trying to work on that, but other than that, very solid player. Came in on a relatively good deal, only for £500,000 at the start of this year. Good little signing, and he's been solid for us throughout this season. At left centre mid, we have Josival, 19 years old, really kind of talented defensive midfielder. A hot prospect for the future, I feel. One of these guys who I can certainly mould into an essential player in our squad. He's a superb, flexible player as well. Being able to play defensive mid, centre mid and centre back really gives this guy some options to play wherever I need him to, which is really good. Obviously, I've been playing a 5-3-2, I'll just show you. I've been playing a 5-3-2. This is the more attacking version of this tactic. We then have kind of a more controlling element and then the defensive counter-attack option. And as you'll see, the only real position that changes is the centre mid. And what having a player like Josival in the squad means is that I'm able to really mould and fiddle around with this centre mid depending on our opposition without our players' kind of positional familiarity really getting hurt too badly. So he's a very nice player to have there and a good little ball-winning midfielder. At centre mid we have Fabio, very good player. This guy, 29 years old, experienced again. This guy, real creative outlet in the centre of the park. I mean, he's a superb Brazilian player, you know, technically gifted. Perhaps his mental ability and his defensive and strength kind of let him down a little. But what he is he's a player which, when you get the ball to him to feet, he's going to work it. He's not the biggest player by any means, but he's kind of a Coutinho, you know, finds the space, finds the opening. 17 assists in 28 games really highlights that, I feel. And then we come to our front two, who have only really recently come to the club and recently started to kind of forge a partnership. Here we have Lacio, really talented target man, a big man in the air, can play poacher as well. But, I mean, very talented player. He came in on a free. He has a value of 8.25 million. He's got 4 years left on his deal. Another player who I've brought in on a free. I'm very lucky to get this guy on a free. And in the future, I'm sure I can sell him on for a good bit of money and bring in youth. And that really is kind of the game when you're in Brazil, I feel. Having never managed here before, I asked a number of other kind of FM YouTubers, what is the best way to go about doing Brazil? And a lot of people were saying, you know, focus on youth. Sell players when they hit their prime to teams in Europe who will pay big money for them, and then look for local talent within Brazil that's a fraction of the price and bring in a number of those players and just kind of rinse and repeat. So I'm going to be planning on doing that here. Our other striker is Kenneth Baba, 27 years old, Nigerian player, Nigerian national player as well at the moment. Superb physical poacher, wins the ball, scores a few as well. 10 goals in 14 games highlights that. Came in this year for 2.5 million, biggest transfer, but at the moment he really is repaying me. So that pretty much is our squad as it stands. It gives you an idea of kind of the strength that we have and where our weaknesses lie. And kind of my plans for the future. Obviously, short-term plan is just to try and stay in the first division for the next few years, and really crack on with then having kind of retained our position, sell on some players, add the strength that we need, and kind of rinse and repeat, as I've already said. So we have a lot of very young players, as I said, but now let's get straight into the fixtures for this time. There's been a number of games since you were last here, and as you'll see, there's a distinct lack of wins here. However, to our credit, we've had to come up against some of the biggest teams in Brazil at the moment, and I'm sure it won't be too long before we're back up in the league and really, starting to win some. So we actually started the season with a 2-1 win against Figueirense. Yeah, we'll go with that. This was a 2-1 win, a really good performance by the players. We dominated the game from start to finish, which was good. I mean, these guys had really tipped for relegation, so to go out there and get a result in the first game of the season was really good for us. As you can see, we did have a sending off and we did get an injury, so it was really good to see us hold on throughout this game. I don't know, it's been hard, this first few months in Brazil. I've certainly kind of had to learn as I've gone. I really want to try playing with these wide players. The 5 at the back works really well in these kind of leagues where teams have a lot of attacking presence, because there's a lot of space often left behind teams as they go forward against you for your wing backs to exploit on the attack. And also, with wide players being a very key kind of component of Brazilian football, it can work very nicely having these wing backs track back when need be, and then finding some space going forward and hitting teams on the counter. But we took a 2-0 lead in this game before giving it up, and then getting a sending off right on the kind of stroke of half time was hard to take. But to our credit, we saw things out. We came back and we held on for dear life in the end and won 2-1 fairly convincingly in the grand scheme of things. So, I mean, as I've said, Brazil is a learning curve. I'm not familiar with this league. I've been kind of swamped and kind of overwhelmed with the sheer kind of length of the seasons here. That's one reason why these episodes aren't as frequent as I'd like, just simply because there is so much football to be played in Brazil across a season. It's really daunting. I can't put it any other way. It's crazy how many games these teams play. But I feel as if we've played some of the tough teams now, and on the back of that we can really look to improve. I mean, if I highlight these 5 results, you've got Cruzeiro, Corinthians, Flamengo, Grêmio and Santos, arguably 5 of the biggest teams in Brazil. And to our credit, we've drawn 3 and lost 2. I would have probably taken that at the start of the day. Some of these teams are insanely talented squads. I mean, Cruzeiro, they're predicted to finish 8th. If I go to Corinthians, predicted to finish 1st. These teams are tough teams. I mean, we got a draw at home against Corinthians. We got a draw at home against Flamengo, who have predicted 7th. These teams are teams who are really fighting for the Copa Libertadores spots, and so to even be kind of competing against them like we have been has been superb to see, and I'm really confident that going forward into this kind of second half of the first half of the season, playing against some of the weaker teams, we can certainly do a job against them. Here we lost 2-0 to Cruzeiro. They were in control of the game, it has to be said. They were the home team. You'd expect them to do that. We set up for the counter-attack, but realistically they never really gave us a chance to hit them on the counter. They held the ball well, and there wasn't much space behind them when we did get the ball to break them down. As I said, a 1-1 draw against Corinthians really was a great result for us. It wasn't until a late penalty by them that saw them grab a point in this game that was kind of disappointing to see. I mean, looking at the stats, we dominated the game. We outplayed the team who were probably the best team in Brazil on the day, and were probably a little bit unlucky not to do better against them. But I'm confident, as I've said, if we can maintain this level of performance going forward, it'll only be a matter of time before we're really competing. 1-1 draw here against Flamengo. Obviously, they're a very strong team as well. In the end, we did take a lead and we let it slip again. So perhaps that's something to work on. But, I mean, at the end of the day, as I've said, very good teams. Looking at the stats, we competed. We really did. This kind of tactic that we're using is certainly seeing us really compete against some of the bigger teams here. Grêmio getting a 1-0 win. Not a lot of goals between these games, and it's kind of like if we had 1 or 2 goals either way, the game could have been completely turned on its head and we wouldn't be in the situation we are in the league. A draw away to Santos was another absolutely superb result. To be fair, they absolutely outplayed us. What we did was we set up for the counter-attack with the anchorman, pump it up to Lacio, and in the end he came good for us, and we got a 1-1 draw, and we had a sending off in the 54th minute. So to hold on for a good period of the second half of 10 men was another superb display by us, and it leaves me really optimistic that as some of these younger players in the squad develop, and as we kind of gel and I'm able to strengthen up the squad going forward, it won't be too long before we're really competing with these big teams. 0-0 draw against I can't say that name, Nautico, we'll go with it. They were a really weak team in the league, and their 0-0 draw was probably one of the more disappointing performances. I mean, looking at the stats, we absolutely tore them to shreds. It was unbelievable, but one of those games where you're knocking on the door and you have to take a chance, and we simply didn't do that, and it was disappointing. That said, we came up with rather a fortunate Brazilian third round draw in the Brazilian Cup against the exact same team, and we put things right with a win and then a draw, which meant we went for an aggregate. As you can see here, a 2-0 win. This game was far closer than the previous game where we hadn't won, but we just simply were more clinical in front of goal, and it really did pay up well for us. As you can see, Alan Wellington, the really talented centre mid, holding his own in the centre, getting the Man of the Match award. He is simply unstoppable on his day. He really does shut down opposition attacks. He's a really good man marker and really able to kind of shut down even the best strikers in the league and really render them useless for the opposition. And then we come up against the same team again for the third time in a week. This was the second leg against Nautico. As you can see, looking at the stats, it was a 1-1 draw, and again we absolutely dominated, but simply for whatever reason just couldn't find a way to break them down, which really does leave me a little bit concerned. They defended well, it has to be said, and we did create really good chances. But it's one of these games where we were kind of fortunate because of the first leg that we'd already won, that this didn't matter too much. But in the league, these are the kind of games we have to win in order to ensure we're not around the bottom of the table fighting against the drop with 10 games left. So that was a little bit disappointing. The final game of the sequence was against Palmeiras. It was a 2-3 home defeat. As you can see here, we were 2-0 up at half-time. I thought we were home and dry, and then for whatever reason, we completely shut down after the break, and they scored 3 in the space of half an hour to take the 3-2 win. I was fuming, I'm going to be honest. It was a really poor performance. As you can see, the whole team didn't really play that badly. It was just we kind of switched off after half-time. Players thought the job was done, and it really wasn't. So all those fixtures mean that in the league we do find ourselves 16th. It has to be said we have played some of the teams really around the top of the table in the likes of Palmeiras, Grêmio, Corinthians, Fluminense, Cruzeiro, Santos. You know, we've played a lot of the teams around there, but we've got to ensure in the second half of the season we start to win against some of these teams in the bottom half who are yet to play. Otherwise we could find ourselves in a very sticky situation, come the end of the season. So we've got how many games? 8 games under our belt. And in total in the season there is 38 games. So I think the next update will probably be around the 30 games mark. I really want to crack on with this season. As I've said, Brazil has a lot of games, and so it's kind of tough for me to find time for the Pentagon episodes because I'm having to play so much on top of my other FM saves to really advance in this. Obviously, we're in the Brazilian Cup third round. We've got America in this, who are a second division side. So I'm kind of hopeful maybe we can get a result there. And that would see us move into the quarterfinals, I do believe, which would be a pretty impressive achievement and perhaps give us an outside chance of potential silverware, I suppose. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, as always, give it a like. Things in Brazil, you know, they're not going terribly, and I feel as if there's kind of lots to build upon going forward, which is good to see. So yeah, leave a comment if you've got anything to say with regards to those series. Other than that, guys, it is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in just a bit. I'm out.